I'm going live now. This was a bit awkward. I had started this and then just shut it down, and um, um, and I'm gonna link on the Fediverse that I'm going live with this again, and then I'm going live now, and we'll hopefully people find it worthwhile. I'm just gonna be showing off some stuff today about how I do artwork in Blender and grease pencil, and specifically this is for the upcoming Spritely release, um, the releases of Guile Goblins and Guile Hoot. And so I'm doing this in Blender, which is normally, it's a 3D graphics program. And normally people think of it, I think, as a 3D graphics program. You can certainly use it that way. So for example, the default scene looks like this, right? It's got this cube, and you can do all sorts of 3D things with it. I can, extrude some stuff here, just make, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just making a shape, right? And it's just a little blocky thing, right? Nothing special. But this is I think what people think is, you've got 3D space oriented things. You might choose to add a monkey, and there you go. That's Suzanne, everybody's favorite 3D character in Blender. But what you might not realize is that Blender is actually wonderful for 2D animation. So I'm going to switch to a 2D animation here, or a 2D view, and I can. What happens when you go to File, New 2D Animation is you're given kind of this default environment that you can sketch in. I think by default the strength of the default tool is at like 50%. Strength here actually just means how transparent it is. So I always bump this up to 100%. And Blender works great here with a tablet for 2D stuff. So one of the other things that you can do is if you click over here or you press the N key on your keyboard, it'll pull out this little menu, and you can go to Tool, and you'll see that it has a number of different settings. And specifically, one of the first things I usually do is I go to the brush settings and I make sure that I have a curve that kind of looks like this. Right? And so the reason for that is that I want to be able to sketch things where the default pressure, if I'm pressing very lightly, it should look light. But if I'm pressing harder, even a middling amount of hard, I actually want the strength to be at about that level. I don't want to have to push that hard to kind of get a stronger effect. So that's typically what I do by default. And then if I want to be, kind of operating in a sketchier setting, I might turn down the strength up here. Now, one of the other things that, if you've never used Blender for 2D stuff before, maybe you're a 2D artist, a lot of this might look kind of unfamiliar, surprising, weird, right? And Blender does take a little bit of time to get used to as a 2D drawing environment, but it's actually quite nice for it. One of the things that you need to really learn by default, one of the first commands you need to do is learn how to press Tab to switch between these different modes. So by default, it'll leave you in draw mode if you're in the 2D drawing environment, and that's probably what you want. You can click over here. I click from draw mode by hitting Tab, and I move to edit mode. It could be that there's a different, I don't remember what the default hotkey is. I use Tab because it's kind of the old school thing, but you can also click up here to switch between these modes. So we want to be in draw mode. One of the other things that we probably want to do is if you go over here, you'll notice all these different tabs, and you can select between them. One of the ones that we want right now is we want to go to material. And so by default, it'll give us a solid stroke material, which is what we're using. Now we can switch this. For example, if I switch to dot stroke, you'll notice it looks a little bit, it looks, after I finish drawing it, it turns into these dots, right? Which is certainly not what I want at the moment. But it's good to know you can switch these. And if I switch again over to edit mode, you'll see that these are in fact, it's this shape, right? And I'm going to delete that. I'm going to go back to solid stroke to just kind of draw normally. But one of the other things is when I sketch things, I like to kind of do a lot of little lines when I'm sketching. Maybe here I'm drawing a character's eye, right? And when I'm figuring out the shape of it, I'm kind of figuring it out bit by bit. And I want those lines to be able to overlap. And if I sketch more of them, I want them to get darker. And you kind of don't get that with the default material. So you have to get that really the way that you would want, you have to go to this material tab here and click self overlap. And that's going to give you closer to what you want when you end up drawing these things. Because otherwise else it just kind of goes with the transparency of like one of the strokes, sort of. So I recommend that. Another thing you'll notice here is that there's these different tools on the side. So I can select eraser. And the default erasing is also kind of not what I want. It has this dissolve thing, but if you click back over to edit, what you'll notice is that these lines are still here. So I actually want those to disappear. So you can switch over to stroke, and actually just delete the entire line, or you can switch to point and kind of remove it, chunk by chunk. But if I switch to edit mode, what you'll see is that that's actually removed more of part of the object. Now I haven't described what edit mode is, I suppose, but for right now, I'm gonna select stroke so that I can just delete entire strokes at a time, which is maybe not what everybody wants all the time, but it's often what I want. So I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna click back on brush again. I'm gonna just do an example of sketching this character, just kind of as a warm up. So I'm just gonna kind of feel out what this character is, So I'm gonna do kind of like a little round, kind of animal-like nose. Maybe some eyebrows up here, and guys kind of figure out who this character is as I sketch it. Like they've got some sort of floofy hair thing going on. I've decided I want some ears. So this is kind of a cat ear like character, and now I've decided, I'm gonna lean all in to that kind of cat look here, and I'm just going to keep kind of sketching away to kind of find the shape of this character. Now one of the things that I might do is say, well, okay, actually, Christine, these proportions are not right, and as I'm discovering what the proportions are, I might switch from draw mode over to sculpt mode. So sculpt mode has some nice things to it. Actually, they've changed some of the way that these tools work here. But down here, you can see there's these different, this says smooth, this says strength. I'm going to do this grab one. So I'm going to select grab. And grab is going to allow me to kind of like move things around on the character. And so you can see I'm just kind of like messing with the shape of the character, finding a version that feels more right. And I can press the F key to kind of change the size here. You can also do that up here in the radius for this grab tool. And now I'm like, okay, this is actually resembling more of the shape of this character that I wanted. I hope this is streaming okay. I see people saying something in the chat. So hello everyone. So I guess I really am live. So I'm going to switch back here. So you can see I'm just switching back between these different modes. I'm going to switch back to draw mode again. One of the other things I'm going to want to do is, once I've got enough of the shape of this character, I've put this kind of nose here. I'm gonna put a mouth. And then I've decided I want to erase a little bit of this nose and kind of redo it. I think that was way too big. So I'm going to switch back here. So I use Blender kind of two-handed, where one hand is on my tablet. It's an old, like 12-year-old, 15-year-old tablet. I'm still using the same one I got. Oh gosh, it's approaching 20 years, I think. It's an old Intuos 2. My old Intuos 2 broke, and then I ended up switching to my sister's Intuos 2, actually. So right now I'm still sketching. I'm finding out the shape of the character, and I've decided that actually I want this character to have some kind of longer flowing hair also. So yeah, this is feeling like a reasonable shape for what I want this character to be. I'm gonna give her a little earring over here, and I'm gonna say, okay, this is good enough shape. Now I want to actually make some real lines for this. So I'm gonna switch to I've shown how you can switch between the different materials. I'm going to switch between to the layers tab right here. So over here it says data. This one says material. This one says data. And what you can see here is it says lines and fills. I'm going to rename this thing. I'm going to click on it twice and rename it to sketch. And then I'm going to press plus again. And I'm going to switch this over to lines. So this is going to be kind of a temporary sketch that I'm going to use to kind of fill in the more permanent version of these lines. So I'm going to redraw over this, and I'm a very sketchy artist. So this is still going to end up being pretty sketchy, but not quite as sketchy. So I'm just going over these lines again, like this. And you can see like it's much smoother in the shape of the lines, but I really believe that actually imperfection is one of the most beautiful things about artwork, and I kind of embrace a lot of imperfection in my personal artwork. I really like sketchy things. I really like bumpy things. I like things that where the imperfection of human art gives it a lot of character, and that's partly because I don't have a lot of good manual control over my hands, and so I have I've kind of developed a style that accommodates that. If you ever see my handwriting, it looks terrible, and that's actually just because I don't have the best motor skills. And so I've found a style that kind of accommodates that. Now, if I really want these lines to look clean, I might actually even do a third pass. And actually, some of Blender's tools are very nice for getting very good, clean lines, and I'll show how to do that. But I'm just giving a realistic version of how I might design a character kind of from scratch. I kind of do something where I sketch out the character and I kind of find out what their shape is, like to this character and its ideas, and then I worry more from there. If I was being more serious, I might actually do a mirroring trick where I switched back and forth mirroring things. That's a great way to find kind of errors in your artwork. I'm not going to do that at the second, but there's some people who have some nice tricks about how to do that in grease pencil, so that some of them even set up like multiple cameras so they can look behind. But just to give an idea of that, if I switch over to object mode and then I mirror this, no, that's a move key, Control M to mirror, and then I hit X, I might actually see, actually a lot of these proportions feel weirdly wrong now that I'm looking at it like this. So I might actually like kind of smudge this around and be like, okay, this looks more like the right proportions. And sometimes until you mirror things, you kind of can't see those mistakes quite as easily. So I'm going to switch back to object mode. I'm going to mirror this whole thing again. And now I like the whole shape of this character a lot more. Anyway, hello. If you're tuning into this, my name is Christine Lemmer-Webber. I am the executive director of the Spritely Institute. I'm one of the people that does some of the artwork. The other people who have done artwork are David Revoix, the author of Pepper and Carrot, also the kind of concept artist for a number of Blender's movies, has done some of Spritely's artwork. We also had Tessa was doing some of our artwork at Spritely for a while, and but a lot of Spritely's artwork came out of some tiny sketches I handed David Revoix that he then kind of ran with and kind of defined the shape of things from there. But I love doing artwork, and I really love Blender as a tool for this. So one of the reasons I love Blender is that all this stuff is this is all kind of feels like raster based artwork, right? Like the kind of stuff that you do where it's all got pixels. But in a certain sense, if you go to edit mode, you can see that like it kind of resembles more like a vector based artwork, right? You've got like a bunch of like points on this artwork, and I can kind of grab them. And you can actually interpret some of these kind of as vector artwork, but I'm not doing that right now. So if I really wanted a smooth version of this, I might actually go and create another layer, and I might say something like smooth lines. And at that point, I'd move lines down in opacity again, kind of have the guiding shape of the two previous ones. And what you could do in this type of environment is that there are some other tools. I had drawn in kind of this shape where I would do these short strokes, which is how I do a lot of my artwork. But I might actually choose to, like, for instance, go over here and choose something like curve, right? So I might go and say, okay, well, I'm going to draw this and put it like this. And then I can use these finer lines to kind of create some smooth artwork. And then I'm going to hit E to extrude. And then I'm going to kind of define the shape by that again. I'm going to hit E again to extrude. Define the shape again. And you can see this is creating a much more smooth piece of artwork, which for certain types of artwork is really more appropriate. But I really, like I said, I love sketchiness in my own artwork, and I love sketchiness in other people's artwork. And I think we're in an era of artwork where defining your artwork by your imperfections is actually great. It's actually wonderful. And I think it's a lovely thing for people to embrace about themselves, about their artwork. Your imperfections are a lot of what you are and what makes you and your artwork beautiful, I think. This is a very experimental little stream. I had no real plan before I started this other than that I need to do artwork for the upcoming Goblins releases, but I thought people might find this interesting because not a lot of people kind of perceive Blender as being a great tool for artists, and I think that's a shame for 2D artists in particular. And with the recent release of Blender with 4.3.0, there's even a you can do more 3D artwork even with 2D tools. I'm noticing some questions in the chat, so I'm going to answer some of those in just a second. One of the questions is, what is Grease Pencil? So Grease Pencil is the 2D artwork tool inside of Blender that I've been kind of showing off so far in this stream. Now I'm going to hit enter, and now you'll notice I've got this one kind of smooth looking line, and I want to just show the difference between this and the other lines. It looks much smoother. If I turn the other lines off, you kind of notice it's a much more vector-like shape. Now you might wonder, why does Blender have a 2D art tool that's called Grease Pencil? What does it have to do with Grease Pencil? What does it have to do with pencils at all, right? You can see what it has to do with pencils, and then it looks like a 2D environment. I'm kind of painting in something pencil-like, right? I'm kind of drawing in something sketchy, and that certainly looks pencil-like. But Grease Pencil actually originally was the name of what's now called an annotation tool inside of Blender, which is now a completely separate thing. So you can actually also in Blender, there's this tool over here. If I switch to object mode, you'll see it says annotate, and I can kind of like be like I might say oh, actually the eyes need to kind of open up to indicate to one of the artists, like in this particular frame, the eyes need to get bigger or something like that. And this refers to like an old tool that was in older, like in film, where people would actually draw on film, per my understanding, with these grease pencils that they would actually draw over top of it. And so originally that's what Grease Pencil was in Blender, is it was just the annotation tool. And then there was kind of this weird thing where some of the Blender community realized, oh wait, this is actually a beautiful 2D art tool on its own. Blender has all these other lovely things. People started pushing the limits of the annotation tool as an actual art tool itself, whereas it was really just intended for annotation. And so it kept that name, and eventually there ended up being a separate tool for annotation that's now called the annotation tool. And the funny thing is that Grease Pencil retained that name. Now, one of the cool things about this is that, aside from just being a nice way to do 2D artwork, you're still in 3D space, right? Which means we can do lots of cool things in 3D space in combination with this. So, for example, if I wanted to really treat this as a 3D scene and say, I'm going to, so I got to go back to object mode, and I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to say mesh, and I'm going to add this monkey. We can have the, oh gosh, it's really taking a while. We can have the monkey, and it looks terrible at the moment in this rendering. We'll go with wireframe. I can have the monkey alongside my 2D character, and they can both exist in the same world. And so you can do things with things moving in the background at a different rate than things in the foreground. You can actually just literally have 3D animations where you do 2D inside them. If you have ever seen the little music video that I did with my girlfriend Vivi in Unexpected Places, it's actually a combination of 2D and 3D artwork. And so yeah, I just I don't know. I think I love Blender, and I've loved Blender for a long time. But I was never really good at the 3D artwork side of things on its own. But I love doing, I love doing artwork. And so when I started using Grease Pencil, it really kind of changed the game for me. You notice I switched to wireframe earlier. I'm still in wireframe mode. I should explain what that is. So you might see me switching between these. It might be easier to tell what that is. If you look up here, I know all these shortcuts in Blender, so you'll see these little pie menus appear really rapidly. So I switched to wireframe, to solid, to rendered, and but you can actually select those from those up here. These are actually just different visual kind of visualizations inside of the Blender editor for how you're seeing your objects. So viewport shading, I guess it is. So if I'm viewing things in wireframe mode, any of my 3D objects also I'll view as wireframes, and if I view them in rendered, I'll actually see like a potentially a lot more beautiful colors and etc. I'm seeing a bunch more stuff comes in from the chat. Hello, people. I'm glad to see that people are enjoying this. So TTY Bitnik says, hello, Christine. It's a bit of a random / off topic, but did you create the List Magician in ASCII art as well? I saw one of your presentations and loved it. Yes, I actually have done a lot of ASCII art. That's back in the day when I was more associated with kind of the FSF Enkidu, and I'm not anymore for reasons I won't get into on here. I used to actually do little like ASCII arts for them at the end of every year, and I have a whole file full of ASCII art stuff. I could pull it up, I suppose. Let me see if I can. I'm gonna pull it up and so you can just see it. But org. Let's see here. ASCII art. There we go. So here is a file just full of ASCII art. Here's a picture of me saying I'm doing Lisp propaganda. Here is a just some like mole-like creature. Here's the Software Heritage logo. Here's some artwork I did for an ASCII art version of some artwork Morgan and I did together for our wedding anniversary. Here's SpongeBob. I have actually a SpongeBob mode in I don't know if I still have this on. No, I think I have to load it. Load file. SpongeBob EL. Yeah, so I can just be like, SpongeBobify region. So I might just say something like, hey everybody, what's going on? And I'll highlight it in SpongeBobify region, and it will it'll make this meme with kind of like the mockery SpongeBob thing that was like a popular meme some years ago. Anyway, I have a lot of ASCII art from way back in the day. I learned ASCII art actually because I used to hang out in a friend's IRC channel where ASCII art was really popular, and sharing ASCII art was really popular. And so I started kind of contributing my own ASCII art, and found out that people really liked it. And so I just kind of ran with it, and kind of learned it that way. Oh yes, I am an Emacs user. And people sometimes ask if I use the Emacs modes for ASCII art, but no, I just type everything by hand. So if I wanted to make a new ASCII art, maybe I wanted to make a new ASCII art of the same character, I'll just show that how I'd do it. I just, I'm gonna just do this live. You're gonna see me ASCII art what it looks like. Little did you know, 2-in-1. It's not just grease pencil. This is also Christine's ASCII art tour, I guess. Thank you for the prompting. I never would have anticipated that this would be something I'd do on this particular presentation. But let's see if I can do this character live, right? So I used to do this a lot, so I was probably a lot faster back in the day. But I probably do something like this to kind of get that pleating eye there. Maybe that make this one a bit lower, and then kind of like start. So this character is like kind of all about the eye, so you really want to highlight that, make that like a major part of this image. So there's the character's eye, and I would just type these things live inside of Emacs for my ASCII art enjoying friends. And what it really is that when you do enough of any kind of artwork, you start to develop patterns. So if you look at enough of my ASCII art, you notice that they all kind of have this patterns of the way that I use dots and dashes, right? And if you look at any of my 2D artwork outside of that, you'll notice completely different kinds of patterns. And I think that developing your own patterns in artwork is a lot of what becoming an artist is, right? You're discovering your style, like as in terms of like how you like to present things to people. And I don't know if this is actually interesting to people. You probably didn't sign up to, you didn't sign up for anything. I didn't sign up for anything either. I just decided to open this stream and start presenting to whoever decided to show up, right? I don't know, something like that. And then I might do get over here, might make some pointy lines here for this character. I might decide I really need to figure out where this mouth is. That looks so sad. She's not that sad. Yeah, you get the idea. This is how I do things, right? And really that's it. It's just messing around. Artwork is figuring out how to mess around, and artwork is a lot like project management in that it's about iteration, right? It's about converging eventually on something. You start playing, or at least this is how I do artwork. You play with things until you kind of know what you want. This is such a sadder version of this character. I don't want to keep doing the ASCII art version of this anymore, but you're getting the idea, right? Like this might be, if I was getting really lazy, I might just start throwing in these over here and be like, yeah, I don't want to spend any more time on this, and then like let those spikes kind of fill in the shape of it. I might turn on overwrite mode so that I can do it faster, but that's how I do it also. That SICP, or the wizard for the presentation that apparently you've seen, I did the same process for doing this type of thing. And you notice it's all about just kind of iterating on flows, and that's enough. That's enough of this ASCII arting. We're done. We're done with that. You get an idea. That's what it's like for me to do ASCII art too. You're welcome. Like I said, I had no real plans other than I need to do artwork for the Goblins and Hoot releases, which I've done none of so far. I've just iterated on this character, and that's just kind of how it is. I'll get to it. I'm going to show another thing about this for the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock everything that's not this layer right here, so I can show off another thing. When I go to sculpt mode, there's something interesting in here, which is about smoothness, or thickness. Watch this. If I want to kind of emulate the way that these individual strokes, they have more character than this thing that has all the same length to it, right? It's really boring that way. What you really want to do in artwork is when a human being draws something on a piece of page, it like the ink or the graphite from their pencil, or lead if you're using something particularly toxic and old, it leads to things getting thicker and then thinner, right? As your hand picks up things around, and it's very uneven, typically, and so what you can do to kind of give this more life is actually emulate that with this thickness thing, and emulate the way that the human hand would kind of add this thickness and this thinness here. And here I'm doing it very haphazardly. I'm just kind of thickening and thinning where it feels like it might have been if I had done these as actual strokes, might be a little bit like that, and like that, and then get thicker out here, and then thin, and then maybe thicken a little bit. And then you can see, like again, I said imperfection makes things beautiful. Previously, the line, is much more precise, right? But it looked a lot uglier relative to the other lines. But now this starts to hold up as a shape relative to where it was before, as something that looks nice on its own. I can also handle the how transparent something is. Oh, active layer is, gotta move it to that smooth line. So now I can make this, I can change how strong this is, and I can make it so that so I can like make some parts thicker and thinner, and it's not gonna look as good with this. Actually, you can see this ugly thing that happened down here when it self-intersects. That's actually probably a case where using the other way of representing things would have been better. And oh god, can I get that thing out of here again, where I have those tabs? How do I get my tabs back? Oh, it's probably this. There it is. Okay, got my tabs back. So if I turn off self-overlap, oh there, see, now that actually looks better. Remember how I said self-overlap looked a lot nicer for the sketchy look, but now that I'm doing it in this particular mode, it looks better without the self-overlap. So it's funny how those kind of things can be, but I'm really going to focus on, I'm not going to use the smooth lines version. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how you could do something that's kind of more like that. I think what I want to do actually is show off another cool thing about grease pencil, which is that you can use it for animation. What I think I want to do is I kind of want to make this character kind of look over here a bit, like, and then blink and then look back. So I'm going to unlock my layers. I'm going to save this first of all. I haven't saved this yet. Bad move me. So I'm just going to call it 20250117 kitty sketch. And this is just a little sketchy file. Now over here, I'm going to actually turn off the more finished lines and just focus on this looser line thing. Turn back up the transparency again. And I might for now, I'm actually going to just I'm going to go to draw mode, and what happens if I go, yeah, if I go over here like this, and I go like, I'm going to draw the character kind of looking off in this direction. And I could actually do this by modifying the previous frames by actually using those kind of smooth tools to kind of make her look over a little bit. But for right now, I really should not be doing this. This is a big distraction. Well, it's too late. We're doing it anyway. I want her to look over here a little bit. I'm not attempting to make this good. I'm just attempting to demonstrate. And you can see, I can see this previous frame, and I'm just gonna like make her ear turn like this, and then kind of down like this, and then her hair is gonna go kind of down a little bit. This is kind of garbage. I'm going so fast, and I can't even see what it looks like without the previous frame at the moment. And I use sculpt mode again to just kind of fix all my horrible mistakes. And say, okay, her eye should be down like that. Yeah, that looks a lot better actually. And then I might go like this, and then so her hair should maybe actually kind of jump out a little bit like that, and kind of like this. And her neck is maybe like that. So now I've got two frames. I've got this initial frame and then this other frame like this, and she kind of jumps between those. And I could hit play, and it would just kind of jump, right? Now you might notice that I can see this previous thing that's called onion skinning, where I can see in between. So what I can do is I can start translating in between. So I've selected a middle position of these two frames. I'm selecting this middle one, and I'm going to start drawing kind of the middle position between these manually, and kind of use it. Her eye in the middle part is actually going to be like this, and it can be kind of like a little bit, feel like a mess to look between these two, especially when it's so sketchy like this. But you know, you kind of figure out how to do it. So I'm gonna put this one like this. I'm gonna kind of jump over. Oh, she lost her eyebrows in the second one. So anyway, I'm gonna jump back here and have her kind of the eyes be like this, and draw the ear like this a little bit, and I can. This is so fast and so terrible that it's probably not going to look any good. Because I don't know why I chose to demonstrate animation in the middle of the stream, because I have no sense of self-worth or strategy on this particular call, apparently. So her neck is going to be in between those as well. And then I'm going to switch over to here so I can see it independently. Wow, this frame looks terrible. It's just garbage. But, you know, I don't really care. It's all a demo. It's all a demo. Okay. You know, you can clean this up later. So, okay. But the real point of all of this is that the idea of in-betweening, I would not have chosen such a complicated character, and I would have not have chosen. I would have made better decisions if I had thought this through. But I'm gonna hit play. You can just see, you know, that kind of like moves between those frames, and it's way too long to move between those frames. her head would turn much faster than that. Okay, so now you can see, okay, she moves a little bit faster. And what you can do is you can like actually just like keep drawing in between until it looks smooth. And I've done other animations like that before, and this was a mistake. I don't know why I did this. I don't know why I showed you this. You have learned things, but not learned them well. So I apologize for that. Whatever. I'm deleting these 2 frames. They're gone. They're no longer part of this history. They're there in the moment for you to have learned a thing. In case you somehow did not know it, that this stuff is good for 2D animation. I have some actual animations. Oh shoot, I deleted the wrong layer. Whew. Thank God for undo. You know, in the earliest days of Blender, when I first started using Blender, when it was first open source, there was no undo. No undo. Can you believe it? You had to save constantly. And that was your undo. Saving was your undo. What a nightmare. We no longer live in these terrible times. So I still haven't shown how to be able to, color things in, right? So if I go back to material again, it's got all these materials, and I'm just going to delete all of these. I'm just going to create a fresh new one right here. I'm going to hit plus, and hit new. What I'm going to call this is I'm going to call this fill. And for fill, we're going to turn off stroke, turn on fill, shock and surprise. And then what I could do, like if I was really smart, actually, I might do these with different colors, or like in the materials. But I'm not gonna show you that yet. I'm gonna actually show you the hacky way to do it. So now that I've turned this on fill, now I've got a thing that says lines and a thing that says fill. So okay, I can start drawing with fill. You can see fill here fills in all at once, and it's actually affected by strength, which actually we don't want anymore. This to be strength affected by the pressure. Just make it be maximum black, so I can turn off and on the pressure tablet sensitivity, and it just creates this black shape, right? There's no lines anymore, but it's all black, and which is not what I want. Now here's the easiest way. If you go into this tool over here, they've got something called they've got color material and a color attribute. We're going to select color attribute. It's the easy way to get started with this. And then I draw this thing up to bring up the brightness, and I'm going to say I love purple. All my characters are purple. I maximize purple wherever I can in my artwork. And they're not all purple, but if you know me, you know I use purple probably a bit too much. So I can just start drawing in shape of this fill on the character. It doesn't matter as much as you'd think if I get it wrong. And the reason is we can fix it up with the same sculpt tools I was showing earlier. And I'm not going to bother with that hair right there, but you can see, okay, I drew a color, and it's this one specific color. Now, if I go over and I lock these other layers again, I can switch over to sculpt mode. I'm going to zoom in, bring this down, and I'm going to move those to align more carefully with where the fill actually should be. Now, there is a fill tool for grease pencil, and I do not ever find it useful. And the reason why is that my artwork is too sketchy. It's so sketchy that the fill tool has no idea what to do with it. It just like it explodes. It runs for a computationally large amount of time and then puts in something useless. So we're not going to bother with that. We're gonna do it ourselves, and we're gonna do it sloppily, and then we're gonna fill it in. And that's how we're gonna do it, right? So now we filled in this fill, and hello fill, created a fill. But that's actually, it's not the best way to do things often. What I might want to do instead is go over here, and I'm going to do something like, I'm going to say eye whites. And what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to turn off stroke, turn on fill, and I'm going to make this one explicitly white, right? I'm just going to go full white on this eye white. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to draw mode. And I'm going to choose under the tool, again, I'm going to switch back to material. right? Because it would draw in purple. That's not what I want. I'm going to draw in white instead. So I'm going to create a new layer. This one I'm going to call this fur fills, right? And then I might call this one eye fills, right? Now I can draw this white shape. And there you go, right? Layered over top of the other one. Now what's nice about doing this, as opposed to the previous one, is I might actually decide, I actually want to change some of this. So for example, let me just, I'll just create, another one of that. I'm going to click duplicate here. I'm going to say eye pupils, right? So I might be coming along to the point where I'm deciding what are the eye pupils. And initially I might choose something like this dark blue, right? I'm going to create another layer for eye pupils. Eye pupil fills. Right? And then I start sketching in this color. It's fine. It's okay. But I can actually change it all at once. So I can go over here and actually just change the color, mess around with it, and say, oh, maybe green looks really nice, right? Or maybe yellow looks really nice. And in fact, it's Blender, so you can animate any of this stuff. So watch, I set this to green. We can make a little animation. I'm gonna put this over the base color, and I'm gonna press the I key to insert it. All right, now I'm gonna jump forward a number of frames. I'm gonna select a different color. I'm gonna jump to the opposite end of the rainbow, hit purple. No, I'm not gonna do purple again. I'm already doing purple. I'm gonna go to red. Then I'm gonna hit I. Actually, it's doing it automatically because this record button's on here. And now, if I play this, her eyes change color. Right? It's animated, so you can animate this with the fill color here, which is kind of a cool thing. I don't actually want to do that, so I'm going to clear the keyframes. But it's cool that you can, right? I think it's pretty neat. All right, let me check the chat again. There's more things that are going on. I see some people are appreciating the messy approach. That's good. So once again, we've still not done any of our artwork for the Hoot release. I'm just messing around with this character, and nor for the Goblins release. But I don't know. I feel like there's not a lot of tutorials out there on how to use Blender and Grease Pencil for these things, and they're so nice. They're so nice as 2D animation tools, and the fact that you define things, and the fact that it's if you draw something like this in a raster program, and then you choose to like say, I really think this cheek should be out further, right, or something like that. You're kind of destroying the image a bit, right? Because your pixels end up smudging, and you kind of introduce some kind of imperfections into it. But by it being kind of this like vectory thing that feels like a painting program, it's I don't know. I think it's pretty good. I enjoy it. What's another fun thing we can do? Since this is Blender, we have modifiers for everything. So I'm going to go over here and go to modifier, and I'm going to do generate, and I'm going to do, or no, not generate, deform, and do noise. And all my character looks really funny now, right? And I'm going to crank it down. I'm going to crank down the position to about 0.2. It's usually where I put it. And now if I hit play, there's this kind of like, might be hard to see. Maybe if I bump it up to 0.5, it'll be easier to see. It's kind of this jumpy effect, right? It like looks like somebody's like hand drawing the animation over and over again. This is actually a really nice feature, especially if you are doing sketchy artwork and you've got a bunch of things in your scene, and some of them you're hand animating the frames at a time, and some of them you're not. You can kind of give this illusion as if you're animating everything in the scene, but really some of them are actually just sitting there and being affected by the noise modification, which is kind of moving things around. So I think that's a lovely little tool. I use it a lot. We can do more things, right? Since this is Blender, do more things. We'll go over here and we say, okay, this is really nice, but what I really need is I need this thing to, I need to add a glow effect, right? So now our character is glowing. But, we might say, oh, okay, well, this is a bit much. This is not actually the best thing to do a glow effect on, so I'm gonna remove that. Actually, I'm gonna show a separate object, right? Maybe this character is doing some magic, right? And to make this extra clear, I'm gonna change the color of the background world to be a bit darker, right? And then I'm gonna create a new object. I'm gonna add grease pencil. Am I in? I'm in object mode. So add grease pencil empty. Okay, and now I'm gonna add some magic stuff for this character to be kind of dancing around this character. And so I'm gonna create a new material. I'm gonna call this I'm just gonna call it magic, right? You can call it whatever you want. And I'm gonna make it kind of this maybe this bright yellow. And I'm gonna, oh, what's happening? Why isn't it drawing with my bright yellow? I'm in the annotate tool. I'm not in grease pencil. What am I doing? Okay, all right, now it's working. Okay, so I can go to this magic thing, this effect thing, and I'm gonna hit glow. And now we've got glowy stuff, right? We've got glowy effects, right? These are fun. Now you'll notice it's got this weird kind of texture to it at the edges, and that's actually because there's only 8 samples being used. We can bump this up, bump it up to, I mean, even if we just bump it up to 16, you'll notice it's a much smoother effect now, right? And you can bump this up to, I usually put it at something like 24. But now we can put some magic around our character. We can put a little, hearts that glow, and etc. Pump it up to 24. And that's nice. It's fun. Boy, I don't know. Is this interesting to people? I'm looking at the chat. I hope people are having fun. I'm just kind of, I really feel like the Blender for grease pencil for 2D artists is a tutorial I never really found online. And so I've just kind of long wanted to do a stream where I just kind of show off on how I do things. And that's what this is, I guess. I said I was going to talk about Spritely. I haven't talked about Spritely almost at all. If you, I guess it's worth saying that this is, I mentioned I'm the executive director of the Spritely Institute. Hello, we work on next generation decentralized network technology. We're currently running a funding campaign. We crossed the 80,000 goal. We're trying to do a stretch goal where you can, if you donate, you can get your name in the credits of our video games. We show off the future of the internet through video games. We have a fun game called Circobon, and we might even do a deluxe version of this video game called Circobon, where you are an owl trying to solve puzzles, and figure out how to solve these circuit-like puzzles. And what's interesting is that you can undo time in this, which you can in a lot of puzzle games. But there's no what's kind of cool is that you're able to undo time, and we didn't have to add any gameplay code for this. This just worked with Goblins, because Goblins already handles transactional undo inside of it. Anyway, this is not a presentation about Goblins specifically, or about our lovely game Circobon, which is really fun and you should play. Nor is it about the Spritely fundraiser, though please donate. It's actually not about anything. It's supposed to be about me making artwork for the upcoming releases of Goblins and Hoot, and I'm instead drawing a cat. Yeah, it is a little bit like Crypt of the Necrodancer in that it's a tile-based, movement game. In Crypt of the Necrodancer is basically a old school roguelike in some ways, but it just has it turns it into a rhythm game by having a a timer on it. So you have to actually do the turn-based game within, you know, like a beat. Otherwise, else you miss your turn, which is a pretty clever design concept. So I guess I should be talking about Hoot and Goblins and Hoot and why we're doing this campaign or something. Why we're I should be talking about the exciting new releases we're about to do. Probably. We're about to do some exciting new releases. We're about to release the first version of so Spritely has this thing called you know, I keep closing my browser and I shouldn't, because it's worth showing these things off. We have this Spritely really has two big deliverables at the moment. Really three. We've got Goblins, which is our distributed programming environment. And we've got Hoot, which is our Scheme to WebAssembly compiler. And Goblins is layered on top of Scheme, more specifically Guile Scheme. But you know, like, it's hard enough to get people to run, you know, Linuxy programs, let alone Scheme programs, let alone Guile programs, let alone telling them that your development environment probably has to be this weird functional package manager and not even the one that everybody uses called Nix, one called Geeks instead. What you have to do is what we do instead is we have Hoot, which is our Scheme to WebAssembly compiler. And so that actually makes it so that our programs can jump on the web. And in Circobahn is actually kind of, that game I showed off earlier was a very early version of Goblins compiled on top of Hoot. But it was a hacked up version because not all of Goblins worked yet. It was kind of our testing, making sure that everything could work. But we're about to make new releases where the first real version of Goblins with the actual Goblins code base running in the browser, compiled with Hoot. And that's a big deal. It means that, like, Goblins network code and everything like that is suddenly going to become available to people who are using who are browser users. So that's pretty exciting. We're hoping for that in the next week before we go off to FOSDEM, and because of that, we want to make this release exciting. So the plan for this stream was that I was going to start live streaming, doing character artwork for the things to make it exciting. What have I done? I've drawn a cat. But it's maybe been fun. So maybe we should actually start figuring out our actual artwork for this thing. I'm not quite sure what to do. How long have I been running this thing? We've got 11 viewers, I guess. We've been running this stream for what? Almost an hour, maybe it's like 40 minutes. I'm not even looking at it, really. And I have not started on that, so I suppose we should start. So goodbye kitty sketch file. We're going to start a new file, 2D animation, and we're going to start coming up with some ideas. So you know my tricks now, right? I'm going to make sure, are my tools, are the curves set up right? They are. Okay, my curves are set up correctly. So I'm ready to start sketching, right? You know, the strength of the pencil tool is at 1. The brush settings are set up here. I don't know why that's interesting. Solid stroke. What's it got? This is only the brush settings for. Why is it not showing me the other one? I'm pretty confused. Advanced. Why is it only showing me the thing for the radius? Why isn't it showing me the one for... Oh, you know what? It's because I turned this off earlier. I turned off the strength. That's why. You know, I can really confuse myself in Blender sometimes. So we need to come up with some ideas. And how do I come up with ideas? I start sketching. I don't always usually know when I'm starting to do things. Hello, Take V. Nice to see you here. Lovely to see another friend join the chat. So I don't always know what I'm doing when I'm starting to do artwork. I actually just sketch things until the ideas kind of assemble. And that's what we're going to do right now. What is the thing for the something like full screen, toggle window full screen? No, that wasn't it, but that's nice. And then there's also another one, toggles full screen area. Control-Alt spacebar, that's what it is. Okay. So now we can just get a canvas, just really focus on this canvas of sketching ideas. So we know we want to have the owl. We know we got to have the goblin. We have to have them doing something exciting together. So one obvious idea could be we could have the goblin, you know, kind of riding on the owl, right? You know, and it could be going on an adventure. That's kind of the idea that's been in my head a little bit. In which case, and right here, we're not trying for the actual artwork of the character. We're trying to block out, like, what would the shape of it be like, right? The goblin has this blobby body and these little arms, and you'd want kind of the eyes and like this sense of like kind of like wonder, and then you'd want the owl, with the owl, you know, wise creature, but also soaring, right? So it's out, its wings are out, right? Something like that. Yeah, that's probably a reasonable idea. And then maybe the owl has got to be doing one of two things. It's either got to be looking ahead or looking back at its friend, right? You know, so it could be looking back and kind of like, yeah, we're on this adventure together, or it could be just kind of going. So this is just kind of, oops, wrong tool. This is just kind of, again, like feeling things out, like what's the right shape of it. I haven't figured out the proportions or anything like that yet. I'm just kind of like, yeah, this is the cool idea. We could, you know, we could have one nice thing about this green grease pencil is we could actually have a background that's moving, right? We could have mountains, right, that are kind of moving off in the distance and have what's called a parallax scrolling effect. So a parallax scrolling effect is you might have mountains, and then let's say you might have like a forest, right? The forest looks like this, and you've got pine trees, stuff like that, and you might even have like a smaller forest behind it. And you can make these things move at different speeds. So we could, for example, I'm going to separate the selection. And I'm going to go back to object mode, grab this. What I'm doing is I'm heading in edit mode, and I'm grabbing some of the strokes, and I'm hitting P to separate them from the drawing so that they become their own object. And then I can kind of like visualize, okay, so they might be here, and they might be soaring, and there might be, you know, like this would be moving by at one pace, and then this thing would be moving at a much slower pace. So we could actually even simulate that, right? So we could let's just test it, right? So I'm gonna exit the, is it Control Alt shape? Yeah, that was it. Okay, Control Alt space apparently. So I've got this here. I'm gonna jump forward about 15 frames maybe, and I'm going to make this move here, and then I'm going to make this move here. And since I've got the recording on, that should auto move between, right? So you can see kind of that. And we can just grab this and kind of duplicate a few times to kind of get an idea of this, and then do the same thing here. Grab this, and there's actually better ways to do this. I could have reused the array modifier if I was smarter about it, but I'm not smarter about it. So, and yeah, you can see it's way too fast, right? But I'm gonna switch this over from, right now this is set at grease pencil. I want to switch to something called the dope sheet. So what this is down here is that this is, you see down here different frames. So we start at frame 1. Right? And then these things are interpolating between these different steps. Since I have the record button on, when I move something, it automatically inserts a keyframe. Now this was way too fast, so I could grab all of these. If I click out the top on the summary, I can grab these layers individually. Or these objects individually. So there's stroke 01, stroke 1. These are not helpful names. So I've got this one highlighted right now, and I can see that's a tree. So I'll type forest sketch. And then this is goblin plus owl sketch. And this one is it's the mountain sketch. So now that we have that, we can, I'm going to just, this button here, with this button on, it'll only show me things if they're selected. So now I can see what these things are. You got mountain sketch and forest sketch. If I want to view everything, I can click this off and it'll show me it no matter what I've got selected. And that's what I want right now. What you can see is these 2 frames, and I said it moves way too fast, right? So we're gonna make it, just grab this, and I'm hitting the G key, moving it out here. And now this will move slower. So now you can kind of see that effect of things moving at different speeds. And it might even be too fast for the forest. So I can choose to take the forest and just make that animation take a little bit longer. Okay? And it's an imperfect way to do things, but you can see, you can get this illusion of depth, and it would be more obvious if these things were filled. If I put fills behind these things, you would be able to see the way that they look like they're, oh, that's funny. They move the thing up. That's unintentional. Yeah, you'd be able to see that more clearly. Anyway, so I kind of like this idea of the goblin on the owl, them being off on an adventure, and then like the scenery moving behind them. I'm reading the chat again. Hello, Daphne. Welcome. Oh, you joined a bit ago. I should have rejoined you then. I also see a comment saying that means that there's times where you do know what you're doing. I guess so. Sometimes, I think. Why am I in charge of a free software organization when I don't know what I'm doing? I don't know. It's because I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. I hope. I like to think so. It doesn't mean that I'm always doing it right. But anyway, I feel like this is a pretty good shape. I like this shape here. I feel pretty confident in it. Reasonably good. Let's refine this a little bit. Let's refine this design. Let's take another sketch over it. Let's say, just call this a shape sketch. Right, yeah, this is kind of blocking things out. And I'm going to do another one where I actually find the sketch of it. Slight things that are important. I'm just going to call this sketch, because it's more of the characters and more of their look. I probably should actually be looking at the reference of what these characters look like, if you think about it. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do at all. I'm gonna hit F3 and then do the toggle window full screen again. There we go. Now I can look at these characters. Actually, I can. I'm gonna toggle the full screen area again, but leave the window not full screen. And this is a very fast way for me to pull up my reference. It was just this character and this character. Right? Those are the characters effectively. So I just need to kind of, but there have actually been multiple versions of the goblin character, and that's actually because there are multiple goblins. It's called goblins with an S for a reason. There are multiple goblins, and that's a secret. We don't have a consistent goblin, partly because there are multiple goblins. If you look at the, oh, is it still up? I'm working on bringing up the old project plan from the original Spritely website back when it was just me working on it. And they had this first version of the goblin that David Revoix did. Well, the first version that David Revoix did, I had done an earlier version than that. And I really like this version of the character. I actually, at one point, experimented with doing my own version of David Revoix's thing. Let's see here. I tried to do, is it Goblin Test? Yeah. This is my attempt to kind of make David Revoix's style in Krita. But anyway, I love this version of the goblin that has like the bat ears also, even though I also like this version that's got like these like kind of more like a ram or like a sheep ears. And it's got fingers. The original goblin, it's pointy. It's got pointy arms, pointy legs. It's got bat ears, so it's a different character. But that's because there's a whole bunch of them. You know, you don't just have one goblin, you have goblins. And then this Hoot mascot. Here's a secret. How did we get the Hoot mascot? How did we get this? It's because I don't think it's. Oh, it's probably the you're probably hearing like bloops from the Mastodon web interface that I have open up. And when people send me direct messages, I get a bloop, and you're probably hearing that. But anyway, the Hoot. How did we get this mascot for Hoot? Well, it's actually just because when we first, in kind of the internal Spritely chat where we had, we brought Andy Wingo in, who is kind of the technical lead on the Hoot project. And Andy's like, well, we need a mascot and a name for this, you know, if we're going to kick off this WebAssembly project. It was right after we got the funding. And so I'm like, you know, and we talked about a bunch of different things. And Dave Thompson and Andy Wingo both love birds, and they love gardens. They love birds and gardens. And so I was like, oh, I had drawn this little pixel art of this owl, and it was before it said Hoot at the bottom. It was just the owl. It was when I was experimenting with Libre Sprite, the still open source version of AE Sprite. And I'm like, well, why don't we just use this as our mascot from now? And so I just grabbed it, and I wrote the word Hoot underneath it, and there it is. That's all the process to create this character that there was. And now you've got a character, right? So yeah, I guess the lore, maybe it goes deep. I don't know. You're certainly finding it out now. You're finding out how ad hoc creating lore is, which is fine. It's fine to do lore in an ad hoc fashion. You just got to keep building it. You know, like people like I know we have at least one person in the chat who has spent some time in the MS Paint Adventures space, let's say, and the Homestuck and stuff, and people are like, wow, I cannot believe all the lore of the space. But I mean, like, that lore just gets developed incrementally, like, you know, like bit by bit, until it becomes like this giant thing, right? And so like you can't build lore all at once. Eventually it starts to develop a coherent shape, but you need to develop it piecemeal to develop any sort of lore. That's true for any lore. Yeah, strong opinions here about lore building. Anyway, so I'm actually gonna bump this up size. Right, easy to do in grease pencil. And now I'm gonna start like sketching actually over it to find out what the actual version of this might look like. I'm noticing again that in our reference one, the owl's kind of got this like almost hairdo like top. And it's got these big owl-like eyebrows, right? And he wants to look up at his friend, right? So let it do that. You know, just kind of finding the shape of it. Make it look like they're having a good time together. The original Hoot Owl, I guess, is kind of stubby. Kind of a stubby little owl. And yet we've got to have this goblin riding on it, so that's a challenge. You know, how do we get a goblin to ride on such a stubby owl? You know, so this might actually be easier in pixel art in a way. It's a funny thing about it. You'll notice I'm using no reference for actual owls. That's something my dad would say, and I learned a lot of artwork from my dad, is that, you know, when you look at it's important to look at references sometimes. Because if you don't look at a reference, you end up with like an abstracted version of things. You try drawing a person without a reference, you end up with an abstracted vision of a person, unless if you've got like a lot of experience drawing a person. But sometimes that's actually something you want. If you sometimes you want an abstraction where it's okay that you don't you're actually drawing something where it's fully abstracted because you I don't know, you want it to be stylized. So this all depends on what you're going for, right? So this now this owl's almost looking pigeon-like in some ways. That's okay. In the pixel art, it has these little dots. We got to figure out what those dots are in this version. Yeah. So now we gotta figure out where does this goblin go. I actually I'm gonna do a separate layer for the goblin sketch because I'm not sure that it's right anymore. I feel like the goblin needs to be like maybe something like really excited and like maybe something like that. Maybe that's right. And it's got to be hanging on to its owl friend as they go on this adventure together. Its legs can be kind of poking out there as it's grabbing on. Maybe its arm is up in the air. It's kind of like, yeah, we're on an adventure. Let's do it. So like I said, artwork for me is a lot of discovery. And I think most things are wonderful as discovery. It's one of the reasons I love Lisp, actually, is, I think if you hear Dave and I give talks, right, we're kind of in this, we're kind of the mindset, which you hear a lot of Lispy people say, of REPL-driven development, right? And when I program, a lot of the programming that I'm doing is actually discovering as I go. I often, Goblins' own design was discovered, right? I had ideas for it, but I would program it bit by bit until I understood what the right shape was for goblins. And you kind of do successive drafts as things kind of develop coherence. The important thing is that it can become the how do you rein that in? If things remain too loose, then you don't end up landing on something coherent. So here you actually can see I'm actually experimenting. I still have this part with its leg out here, but I'm experimenting with, well, what if the leg was like right there? And I'm being messy about it. I'm letting both of those be there at the same time. Right? I might decide, I like it. I like it like right there. And now, I'm just going to go over here. I'm just going to erase all that. It's better like that. Oops. Yeah, whatever. Can redraw it. In fact, it looks better redrawn. There we go. Now we're getting a shape. It's starting to look like something feasible, like something that we could do for artwork, right? I'm starting to like this. So the Daphne says, I thought that these pixel art dots were shading. They are both. They're both shading and texture. It's kind of a dithered texture. And I thought about this when I was doing the artwork. Are these dots because it's like a spotted owl thing, or is it because it's shading? And I kind of like the ambiguity, not specifying that, but I kind of do like them being part of the body. Oh, and you can see I've now drawn across two objects. The owl is now split across two things. It's fine because we can just join them now. We know what the shape is. So I'm just going to click up here on this layer, and I'm going to click merge down. So now we've just got sketch. So now you can see, here's our first draft. See how much larger the goblin is there. Here's our second draft, right? And it's still very sketchy. It's not good enough to actually be the release, but it's good enough to be something exciting. Now I could choose to add more detail. I could choose to add a backpack on this character, for instance. That might be fun. Or something else. But what do you think? Feel free to give your opinions in the chat. Do you like the idea of a Hoot and Goblin adventure? I should certainly save this. So I'm going to say Spritely Goblin Hoot sketch.blend. Well, this was fun. I think I'm going to come back and do some more of this this evening. But I think I'm going to take a break. I've been streaming for a little over an hour. And I think I'm going to let these kind of ideas kind of gel a bit. And I'm going to share this in the internal chat so that the rest of the Spritely people can see what I'm working on so far. Hope you've enjoyed it. I hope if you wanted to learn a little bit more about Grease Pencil, that you did. I didn't really talk that much about what Spritely stuff is, but you maybe learned a little bit about how I do artwork and how I use Blender and Grease Pencil together. I've only scratched the surface about why Grease Pencil is such a wonderful tool. Most of what you've seen really doesn't look too much different about what you can do in other 2D programs. The power of Grease Pencil really comes from the power of combining Grease Pencil with the rest of Blender, and we can explore that later. But for now, thanks for joining, and maybe I'll do another stream later. Let me know if you enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody, and take care. Bye!